It's not October, but everyone is mad at Dave Roberts. What did he do, and why is everyone so up in arms about it? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about a trade involving a former Dodger who went to the Yankees and who closes out a trade that the Dodgers made a few years ago. And Yoshinobu Yamamoto could be worth a lot more money than maybe we all expected. Should the Dodgers pay that? That's what's on tap. So let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. This is the daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us where we find podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. And if you want to become an everydayer, all you got to do is listen or watch every day. We greatly appreciate that. If there's your first time listening or watching, you are doing the first step of becoming an everydayer. And I'm Vince Samperio, joined by my co-host, Jase Snider. And we are both lifelong Dodger fans that have spent pretty much most of our lives that we can remember watching the Dodgers. We've also covered the Dodgers. We've done this podcast for a few years now. And, we're outside of our real life, our other life revolves around the Dodgers. So we're here to talk about that, give some what we believe is smart and rational thoughts, and at times maybe irrational to you, but regardless, you don't have to agree with everything. You just have to listen, and that's what we're going to talk about today, because I probably have some feelings about some of the things that happened on Tuesday that are maybe different than yours. And Jeff, the first thing that kind of happened, Dave Roberts spoke to the media, and he let it be known that the Dodgers met with Shohei Ohtani, that he is their top priority, that the meeting went well, he thinks, and pretty much put it all out there in a sense of what literally happened. There was a report a few days ago from Jeff Passan that said that teams that leaked information or leaked about whatever with Ohtani would kind of be frowned upon. I think there's an argument of semantics here, but I'll push it over to you first.
Yeah, yesterday we talked about what the word everyday means, and maybe today the question is, what does the word leak mean? And it's not quite as clear as the word everyday. That one has a clear definition. The word leak, is a manager saying, yeah, we met with this dude 4 days ago. Is that a leak? It comes down to, we don't know what's important to Shohei Ohtani. That's been the theme of his free agency all along. We know, presumably because somebody leaked it to Jeff Passan, that Shohei's camp frowns on leaks. So there's a little bit of irony there. But what does that mean? For me, if I was saying no leaks, it would be, I don't want it to be a circus every time he meets with a team. There was zero doubt in anybody's mind by Tuesday morning that Shohei Ohtani had either met with the Dodgers or was going to meet with the Dodgers. And so the fact that Dave Roberts confirmed, yeah, we met with him 4 days ago, it doesn't feel like a leak to me. And just the fact that, if Shohei and his agent Nez Bilello have a no leak policy, surely that was communicated to the teams, which would include Dave Roberts. And so I was very confident in my stance that Dave Roberts wouldn't be talking about it if it was a violation of Nez and Shohei's wishes. I got a little bit less confident about that when Brandon Gomes talked. Seemed genuinely surprised that Roberts had said that. Everybody, there's so much body language reading that Dave Roberts, right after he was done with his press conference, he looked at his phone and got a really serious look on his face. So people are speculating that he was getting texts from his bosses and getting called on the carpet. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. Maybe he just has RBF, and when he's reading a text message, maybe that's just his, I'm reading a text face. So I'm not interested necessarily in trying to read his mind, but I still think that if Shohei Ohtani wants to play with the Dodgers, he's not going to let the fact that the Dodgers manager confirmed that they met with him 4 days ago, when the Dodgers kept it a secret. Nobody knew at the time. Nobody has reported that. They kept that a secret. There were no leaks. So confirming it 4 days later doesn't seem like a good reason to pull out of a deal if he wants to play with the Dodgers.
The dictionary.com definition of leak in this sense is to allow to become known as information given out covertly. This was allowed to be known, not covertly. Dave Roberts said it.
He's the manager in a press conference. Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you go by the word leak, the Blue Jays not saying anything, but we know that he met with the Blue Jays because of a Ken Rosenthal article. That's a leak in some sense, maybe not from them directly, but it was a leak. The fact that we know Shohei was in the Bay Area and met with Buster Posey and them, the Giants didn't announce that. It became known through various ways, and whether it was leak or not, that's what a leak is. So for the Dodgers, they just said that we did that. That's not a leak. That's just telling what it was. Again, I think it's all overblown in general anyways. If the Dodgers don't sign Shohei Ohtani, I know there's probably going to be fans that are going to blame Dave Roberts, but
fans might blame Dave Roberts for something?
Those are the same fans that were going to blame Dave Roberts regardless. So yeah, for me, I don't think any of this really matters. I don't think, I think where where maybe Brandon Gomes was kind of sketchy on all this is that you don't know he doesn't know exactly what you can say that's considered tampering. And what Dave Roberts did, a couple of reporters said it wasn't tampering. You can talk about, what you've done or whatever, but you just can't do anything that would cause a player's stock to go up or down in any way. And, him meeting with the Dodgers, I guess technically could make his stock go up, which I don't think they're as concerned about anyways. So yeah, I think it was a fun story for the day, and it made for, a lot of hoopla on social media. But at the end of the day, like, it wasn't leaked. Dave Roberts said it, and I would imagine that if there was something in the meeting that said, hey, we don't want you to say anything, and Dave Roberts said something, then yeah, that would be an issue. But if he was confident enough to say it, I don't believe that was said in any meeting that they had.
Yeah, I would guess Brandon Gomes' stance, and if Roberts did get a lecturing text, it was more along the lines of, remember, our policy is to not mention any free agent by name, just to avoid even the appearance of tampering. I would guess it's not specific to Ohtani, but nobody's going to misconstrue this as tampering. It could still, even if it causes stock to go up, then it could be the owners who are mad, and crying tampering, which is a thing. But in a court of law, like, all the defense attorney would have to say was, okay, did you really think the Dodgers weren't going to meet with Ohtani? Like, do you really think that Ohtani's value went up because the Dodgers confirmed something that everybody already knew? And so, there's no tampering there. And I don't think there's anything that Ohtani and his agent will construe as leaking. It does reinforce my desire for the Dodgers to sign Ohtani, just to put this to bed, because I don't want to deal with people saying that it was because of Dave Roberts' leak, so I still think he's going to sign with the Dodgers. I hope he does. And that desire is a little bit stronger now.
Yeah. And, there's, again, always different reports every day. There was a report that the Cubs were out of the running for Ohtani, and then there was a report that they're not quite out of it, but others are perceived to be more front runners, aka the Dodgers and Blue Jays and Giants, and then Angels. And then, there's just a lot going on right now that we can speculate and talk about it all. But at the end of the day, I think the one report that hopefully is true is that he's set to make his decision in the next 4 to 5 days. So hopefully by next week or into next week, he'll make that decision. And, as it stands for the winter meetings, that would have been beneficial for him to have done all this before, to make that decision now. There's been, one bigger trade that we'll talk about, a few smaller signings, but we're going into the final full day of winter meetings. And as of 9:21 p.m. on Tuesday, there hasn't been too much.
Yep. I have one other thing to say about this, but we could do that after the ad break.
All right. Jeff's comment, Yoshinobu Yamamoto's worth, and more coming up. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. We come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of life, but there's times where we need to talk about preparing for tough situations, because that's just the reality of the world we live in. And whether you're on extended travel, bracing for that big earthquake in the LA area, or any other major weather event, or just limited by yet another supply shortage, you're covered, because our partners at Jase Medical have life-saving antibiotics and a long list of daily medications that can be ordered in a 1-year supply, even ED generics for Cialis or Viagra. Jase Medical has the Jase case. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. All this stuff that could happen to any of us. And it's easy to get. Jeff is, a dad, so he was already on board with it. He got his Jase case. It came within a few days, and he's prepared for anything that happens in his life. So why not? Why won't you be the same? Go to jasemedical.com, complete your physician encounter. It'll be reviewed by a board-certified physician. Your medications will all be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jasemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. That's jasemedical.com. Use code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. If we're not your first listener of the day every day, you should consider it if you have time in the morning. But if we're just part of your listen at any point of the day and you're an everydayer, we still appreciate you. So, go find us where you get podcasts, and on YouTube, just search for Locked On Dodgers. Remember, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts from Locked On and the national shows covering every league. Locked On Sports Today, you can find it on YouTube, and go subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, Jeff, we'll let you finish up a point and then head on to Yamamoto talk.
All right. I think the big takeaway from Tuesday was the media's ability to make everything about them. Like, it is remarkable how many people turned on Shohei Ohtani because somebody thinks that Dave Roberts might have gotten the Dodgers in trouble for leaking, when Shohei and his agent have not said publicly anything about the leaking. Nobody has from their camp has said anything about the Dodgers or what Dave Roberts said. And nobody was complaining when word came out a couple weeks ago that they would frown on leaking. It's only in the moment when, now that somebody may or may not have leaked something, and now everybody's up in arms about how insecure is Shohei Ohtani. I've seen several people saying, things along that line. If he does let this keep him from signing with the Dodgers, that says more about him than anything else. And it's like, well, yeah, it's not about you. And like, if you're Shohei Ohtani, you've earned the right to free agency and to have that play out and make your decision based on whatever criteria you want. And if one of your criteria, maybe it's a litmus test, and I am a unicorn player. I'm going to have special needs and special demands when I'm on the team. So this is a test to see if they can follow one special demand ahead of time, and that's perfectly reasonable. And I think that between that and people saying the winter meetings need to be changed because nothing has happened, and so it's been boring for the media. You and I have both spent time in the media room at the winter meetings and heard people muttering at about how boring it is. And it's like, well, you know what? Winter meetings aren't for you. You're there to do your job. And sorry if it's not exciting enough for you. Anyway, I'm glad we're not quite insiders because it hasn't been a glowing day for the media on Tuesday.
Yeah. It can be boring for fans too, but that's just because we're used to the other leagues and the way free agency goes in those leagues. So that's just a matter of nature of the beast. But we did get a small nugget. Again, every nugget is taken with a grain of salt, depending on who it comes from or anything at this matter. If it isn't straight from anybody's mouth that is directly involved. John Heyman reported or mentioned that Yoshinobu Yamamoto's deal could start getting into the $300 million range. There was another report that said it would for sure get into 200 million and, maybe the mid to high $200 million range. And now the conversation is, one, do we actually believe that is possible? And two, for the Dodgers' sake, how high do you go for a player that, despite knowing what kind of stuff he has, still has never faced major league hitters on a consistent basis?
Yeah. And our buddy Ben Kaspic made a good point on Twitter. I'm scrolling his timeline now, trying to find it. Yeah, he said on Twitter, he said that Farhan Zaidi, the former Dodgers GM, now the Giants GM or president of whatever he is, said he's talked about how free agency is not the best way to acquire youth and athleticism because guys are typically about 30 years old. That's not the case here with Jung-Hoo Lee and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, both 25 years old. They're really special cases age-wise. And, Ben's a smart guy. Other than being a Giants fan, Ben is really, really smart. And I think that he makes a really good point that most of the time the Dodgers do sit out free agency somewhat because it's not the most cost effective. Zach Greinke got more years than the Dodgers were comfortable with. Bryce Harper got more years than the Dodgers were comfortable with. And that was even with Harper being, almost unprecedentedly young in free agency, but all these guys who get these big deals, like we talked about before, it's usually paying for what you've done rather than what you're going to do. With Yoshinobu Yamamoto, there's a very real chance that whatever team signs him will actually be paying for what he's going to do. Because, guys coming over from Japan, usually he's probably not going to get a 10-year deal. If he gets an 8-year deal, that takes him through age 33. And so he's going to be in his prime for a lot of an 8-year deal. Assuming he stays healthy. And that's always never a safe assumption with pitchers, but you know what I mean? But he is, not quite the unicorn that Shohei Ohtani is, but an elite starting pitcher hitting free agency at age 25 doesn't really happen very often. And so I think it does make sense for teams to go crazy a little bit on Yamamoto. Even though he hasn't pitched in the big leagues, that we have enough years of data of how MPB generally translates to the big leagues to know what to expect. And, we saw what Aaron Nola got. And I believe that Yamamoto is a better pitcher right now than Nola and significantly younger. And so he's going to get a lot more than Nola. And whether that's 230 or 250 or 300 million, I don't really know. But, if you talk about an 8-year deal, I doubt it would get to 300 million, but 8 years, 250 million, that's not really that much more than 8 years, 220 million, an extra $4 million a year or so, which, is a lot to you and me, not a lot to a major league team, especially a team like the Dodgers. And so I would guess that he's going to get a lot of money and he's probably going to be worth it unless he gets injured.
Yeah, I think, for him, obviously the benefit is there's a lot of teams in on him, and seemingly every day or even in the same day, we get someone new as the front runner or the other day it was the Yankees were, the front runner for him. Then it was, the Giants were the front runner for him. And then there's been reports that, the Mets maybe won't be outbid for him because, they want to pair him with Kodai Senga. And, the Dodgers have obviously been involved. There's been, every big money team has been involved. I do wonder, kind of, obviously the age is the big part of it. But I wonder, guys like, Blake Snell and things of that are seeing all these numbers and hey, I've already proven myself in the big leagues and I'm not getting linked to those type of numbers. But again, that's just, it's a combination of a few things. The unknown, what you're getting with Blake Snell for the most part. And, you can love that or not love that. Obviously, winning Cy Young would be good, but, there's different ways to go about it. And he hasn't always had the best seasons. With Yamamoto, it's a little bit of the unknown. And I think, we've seen, guys come over. Senga last year. I mean, Senga kind of had a weird year because it was quiet because the Mets weren't good, but he had a really solid season for, what it was. And he's not even as heralded as Yamamoto was. So as Yamamoto is. So yeah, I think there's obviously the Dodgers are going to have a point where they don't want to spend. I don't think Yamamoto's going to get 300 mil. I think 250 mil is, definitely more in the cards now, especially if it's a longer term deal. And again, he can sign an 8-year deal and still have a chance to sign another 3+ year deal after he finishes that, if he stays durable and healthy and pitches well. So yeah, I think obviously the Dodgers have a number. I think 250 would maybe be the number I would be comfortable with for a guy like him. But obviously it's all going to depend on years and breakdown and everything else.
Yeah. But it's going to be fun to watch. And I kind of feel like flashbacks of, who was it, Bryce Harper and Manny Machado, who were free agents the same offseason. It's like, who's going to sign first? And it seemed like they're waiting on each other. I wonder if there's any of that here with Ohtani and Yamamoto, or if it's just that they're both, taking a little bit of time. And,
at least with Yamamoto, there's an end date.
Yeah. And Machado and Harper didn't sign till, Harper was in spring training, right?
Yeah,
so, I assume we're going to get an answer on Ohtani before that, and we're definitely going to get an answer on Yamamoto long before that.
Yeah. All right, there was a trade that happened among two AL East teams, two AL East rivals, involving a former Dodger, Alex Verdugo. We're going to talk about just that trade in general, kind of closing out the Mookie Betts trade as a big picture with the Red Sox, and maybe not fully closing it for the Red Sox side with potential thing that could happen. So that's what's on tap. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Remember to become an everydayer by listening or watching to Locked On Dodgers every day. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. And also check out Locked On Sports Los Angeles, a 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that covers all Los Angeles sports at all points of the day. So go subscribe, and you'll see us on there for sure. All right, Jeff. So later Tuesday night, not more later on the East Coast, there was a trade announced that Alex Verdugo was going to the Yankees for three pitchers are going to the Red Sox. Not a surprise that Verdugo got traded, because it's kind of already been reported. They've seemingly had issues with him still in terms of whatever it is. He's had to sit out some games and stuff like that. And he's going into, I believe, his final year before he's a free agent. So not surprised there. The surprise was he went to the Yankees. The Yankees and Red Sox have only traded, I believe this was the 7th time ever. And usually they're not bigger trades like this, or at least with a name of some stature. And the report right after the Verdugo trade was kind of split between Yankees are still pursuing Juan Soto, and 2, the Yankees may use Verdugo to get Juan Soto. But before we get into that type of stuff, this officially closes out. Well, I guess not officially. Connor Wong's still on the Red Sox, I believe, or in the organization, but he had already been DFA'd, right? And then he got picked back up.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so that trade's officially closed on that side, where, I think the Dodgers ended up doing pretty well in that trade.
Yeah, it's, when the Dodgers made the trade, obviously they got the best player in the trade in Mookie Betts. And the justification from the Red Sox side, partly was, payroll flexibility, getting rid of Mookie and Price's contracts. But also we're getting whatever it was, 15 years of team control between these three players, for maybe 16 years, 4 years of Verdugo. Actually, I guess it was 5 years. So yeah, 17 years of team control over these players. And so just by sheer numbers, you think, well, maybe, and Mookie was a 1-year rental. While the Dodgers did sign him to an extension, really the 1 year is all that matters. And maybe if you crunch the numbers, with the shortened 2020 season, I would guess that Verdugo, Downs, and Wong combined for as much WAR as Mookie in the shortened 2020 season since they got traded. But it's a lot closer than you would expect it to be. 3 players over 4 years compared to one 60-game season. And the fact that Mookie Betts is still a Dodger and is going to retire a Dodger and is going to go in the Hall of Fame with the Dodger hat on his plaque, probably. And the Red Sox now have, all they have left from that trade is the guy that got thrown in, because the bruised Gradderall part fell apart or whatever. It's like, it was a bad trade at the time. You can understand why the Red Sox did it, but it only looks worse now.
Yeah, and Red Sox fans, they're still up in arms about it. There's the occasional people that try to justify it, but Yeah, I don't think there's really any justification there. But how it could also affect the Dodgers is in regards to a Juan Soto trade, whether that's Verdugo being used, which would be kind of funny if, the Red Sox traded Mookie Betts for Verdugo as the main piece. They end up keeping him a few years, and then they trade him to the Yankees, and then they help their rivals end up getting Juan Soto for a year, which would just be the ultimate. Like, if you're a Red Sox fan, that's got to be like ultimate, just all bad. But regardless, the Yankees still in the mix for Soto. Obviously, for the Dodgers' sake, if it's Verdugo or whoever else the Yankees are looking to deal for Juan Soto, it just really knocks down the Padres another tier, I think, if they don't have him in the lineup.
Yeah, Verdugo is very good. He's no Juan Soto. I could see Verdugo, if he did get traded to the Padres, could see him becoming a Dodger killer. He seems like the kind of guy who might get that chip on his shoulder. They didn't want me, and now I'm in their division. And so he could be the kind of guy who does play well against the Dodgers. But overall, Alex Verdugo is not the player that Juan Soto is by any means. And we'll see that a year from now when they both hit free agency and Soto gets a whole lot more money than Verdugo. But yeah, it could be that, if the Padres want to trade Soto, but they also need a replacement, especially with talks that the Padres are trying to force Trent Grisham to be involved in a Juan Soto trade to take his money off the table. Maybe this is something that, if the Yankees eat some of Verdugo's contract money wise, and, it does seem to make sense. If the Yankees really do want Soto, it would make a lot of sense for Verdugo to be one of the ones going back to the Padres in that trade. And then we would never have to see what Alex Verdugo looks like without his Mose Schrute beard.
Yeah, that's the other part of it. Definitely would have to take off a few of the chains as well if he stays in New York. So would be a different look for Verdugo. But yeah, I mean, for the Dodgers, it might not mean much, but I guess it could mean something. Their Juan Soto talks have been kind of stalled lately. The Yankees and them are still trying to figure things out. The Blue Jays were a hot name for a while, but they're kind of in the Ohtani mix now, so it's kind of calm there. Other than that, there hasn't really been much else. Eduardo Rodriguez is at the winter meetings. I don't think there's anything there for the Dodgers because, they're not necessarily looking for that, and maybe they have a bad taste in their mouth. Giolito's, a few teams were named. The Dodgers have already been linked to him before. I don't know, Jeff. You think anything happens for the Dodgers here in the next day?
Probably something, but nothing major. I mean, really, it comes down to when Ohtani. I mean, we know that Ohtani's met with the Dodgers. We know he's met with the Giants, and we know he's probably met with the Blue Jays. And if they really are the finalists along with the Angels, he knows what the Angels have to offer. And so, I mean, his decision could come anytime. So that could be today. But I could totally see Ohtani not wanting to sign during the winter meetings because he doesn't want to do a press conference at the winter meetings with all the national media there. He might rather just do the press conference with the local media in whatever market he signs with. So, I would guess that nothing major happens. The big thing today is the Rule 5 draft, and that's, probably going to affect the Dodgers in that a couple of guys will probably get drafted. But other than that, I don't expect big news today.
Speaking of draft, the Dodgers are slotted into the number 23 spot in next year's draft in the first round, the lowest they've been in a while. The draft lottery has proven to be a bit of a wild card now because both years there's been teams that have made last year wasn't a significant jump for the Twins, but they got up there. This year was a pretty significant jump for Cleveland, getting the number one overall pick with was it 2% or 2% chance? I think 18 out of 1,000 of the algorithms or whatever were in their favor, and they got the one that worked out for them. So
yeah, when you go into the draft lottery and you see the A's had an 18% chance of getting the first pick, by far the highest of any team. But then you think about what 18% actually is. That's percentage chance the Dodgers have to win the World Series every year going into the postseason. And doesn't happen that often. It's less than 1 in 5 is the actual odds. And so, you always take the field, even though the A's have a better chance than any specific team. The A's have a much worse chance than the not A's have. And, I'm happy. The A's ended up what, the 4th pick.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of not rewarding teams for sucking. The draft lottery I think is dumb. I would rather reward teams for trying to win, and the A's definitely don't fit that bill. And so I'm happy that they didn't get the 1st pick. I wish they had gotten the 11th pick.
Yeah, it did happen to the Nationals. Teams that are on revenue sharing can't have lottery picks back-to-back years or whatever the ruling is, so they got dropped down. I think, I don't know how that works. I think the A's maybe would have to drop down next year. I don't know, but either way, Dodgers have 23rd pick, highest in a while. They always seem to find someone in the late 20s, but high 20s or low 20s, depending on how you think about it, will be a different aspect for them. So
yeah, it's their highest since 2017. And they haven't had a actual high pick since they drafted Clayton Kershaw. They've been down in the 20s, I think, every year since then. And so, it'll be interesting to see, but they are very good at drafting. So hopefully, and they didn't sign any qualifying offer guys, and so they didn't have that penalty. Enjoy it now, because if they sign Ohtani next year, the highest their pick would be 31st or whatever. So, and that's if they, so it's enjoy it now.
Yeah. All right. That's going to do it for today's episode. Thank y'all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. If you want to spill the beans about us, like Dave Roberts did about the Dodgers meeting, you can do that by telling your friends and family to find Locked On Dodgers wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, and how to become an everydayer, which is to watch or listen every day. Also, a reminder, the 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube is here, Locked On Sports Today. All you have to do is search for that on YouTube, and you can get news from all the leagues, all the top sports stories, all day and night long. You can also find the LA version on Locked On Sports Los Angeles, wherever you find, or not wherever you find podcasts, but on YouTube. So you can also find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snider. I'm at Vincent's91. You can DM either of us with questions, comments, topics, concerns. You can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car, if you're at home, tell your smart device play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.